The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Sorry, bitch!
Boy. See, now it's Erik trying to screw me up. Not happening, Watkins.
I think we should all take turns trying to screw up Harry to start off.
Yeah, well, it's not going to work right now because this show's been delayed enough. We need to get this sumbitch on the road.
Yeah, we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kickoff here on the W2M Network, online at W2Mnet.com. I am your host, Harry Broadhurst. Joining me at this time, the down since day one co-host turned executive producer, Brandon Biskobing.
This has been a crazy off-the-air show.
Yeah, I would agree with your idea in principle, if only that we label it point of viewer, listener discretion advised.
Isn't that what point of viewer is anyway?
Well, I
One
mean,
way or another.
speaking of the point of viewer, that belongs to our executive producer turned co-host, Erik Watkins.
Yeah, I really should have stayed away from my bookie last weekend.
Did you fail
even,
miserably?
But, I broke even, but it's still... Without the power of Big Dick Nick, what's the point anymore?
You got too overconfident after you actually had a good week to start the postseason. You sucked all of the regular season, but one good postseason week and you think you're invincible.
It goes straight to your head.
Yeah, I know.
Straight
It was while it lasted.
And speaking of that, Harry, don't forget who your regular season champ is.
Lost the predictions title to you, lost a fantasy title to...
The only person you did lose to here is Erik.
That is true. Buffalo did beat Jacksonville, so I got that going for me.
Who didn't beat Jacksonville this season?
He won the game of life. In Erik's defense, with his stories, he wins the game of life.
True.
Thank you, and especially after last night.
And that voice you just heard is the chairman of the W2M Network, Jason Teasley.
Or the champion, whichever you want to call me.
The chairman, thank you. Fuck you. Goodbye. Well, that only took about 4 minutes into today's show. Thank you.
You know you're going to get railed on all of next year about both of these, right?
Yeah, but next year Buffalo might not suck, and my team has an actual legitimate chance at making the college football playoff as well. I know. Rant forthcoming later, I'm sure. Anyway.
Hold on. Sidebar. Real quick, sidebar. You wasn't the zookeeper that got attacked for trying to have sex with the gator, was you?
Was not. I know better. Although I did find out that there's a guy in Pennsylvania who has an emotional support alligator, and now I'm trying to talk Christine into getting one.
You definitely should.
I think so.
I want an emotional support penguin.
Harry, you get an emotional support alligator, I think you would be legally required to move down here. Because seriously, that is the most Florida thing I've even heard. Not even here.
This is coming from our resident Jacksonvillian. It's time to talk about the best and the worst of last week in the NFL since college football is over. It's time for Studs and Duds. Erik, you lead us off as per usual.
Well, for a certain team that wears blue that I can't stand, I do have to give them some credit. While on our last week's show, I picked one particular running back of theirs that should really step up and have a big day for them to have success. There was another one that shined. As one chiseled Adonis nicknames him, Sony PlayStation Michelle. Literally running right through and scoring 3 touchdowns. It's like, I wanted to watch that game so desperately, but once it gets to 21-7 and they can just grind down the clock like that. It's like, what's the point? I'm just going to go to Netflix, and that's what I did. But Sony Michel, just for that performance, you have to be my stud of the week. I feel dirty. I've had cleaner moments than that in motel rooms in the last 2 minutes.
My apologies to the girls that you only lasted 2 minutes with.
Yeah, really.
Look,
Brandon.
no, the last 2 minutes of me saying
that, fair enough.
You wouldn't know anything about my stamina, and especially if you were to go on
Michelle!
He was about to go on a full-on rant there.
He says that he runs marathons. That's his stamina. He's training for the Boston Marathon.
In Jacksonville? Okay. Brandon,
the game
you train in the heat.
Remember, I'm going last.
You train in the heat. To prepare your body for the endurance that you must overcome. And overcome.
I hate all of you. Jason, stud.
And overcome.
Brandon.
My stud is Michael Thomas. I mean, the kid is a freak and single-handedly put the Saints on his back, marched him down the field. 12 catches for 171 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, that's wide receiver 1 numbers by a long shot. That puts him in the at least conversation of top 5 wide receivers in the game right now. I mean, you can talk about Drew Brees being the quarterback and everything, but the kid is arguably, in my opinion, the 4th best wide receiver in the game right now.
And based on AB's performance this year, I wouldn't be surprised if you could go ahead and move him up into that top 3, because this was an incredibly disappointing season for Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
His last season in Pittsburgh.
I think I saw the stats there, if I'm not mistaken, like 2nd or 3rd in the league in receiving yards this year for Thomas.
I don't know. I haven't. I'm looking at Florida Man on Twitter. Those are some great tweets.
Brandon, stud.
So does this sound familiar to you, Harry? Former Bill goes off on a tear in the playoffs for a different team?
You're going to have to be more specific.
That would be one C.J. Anderson, who went for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Rams in the divisional round.
Okay, I'll bite. When the hell was C.J. Anderson a
Wait,
Bill?
I thought C.J. Anderson was on the Bills for a bit.
We had C.J. Spiller.
Oh, you're right.
Look, if you're going,
bravo, Brandon.
If you're going to bring up former players on teams of us members here and hosts on the podcast, the Rams have Dexter Fowler Jr., which means that they should be favorites to win the Super Bowl.
Fair enough.
Come the trading deadline every year, you get a Jaguar, you get a Jaguar, you get a Jaguar. Go ahead, Jason.
Thomas finished 6th with a 14.05.
Top 3, real quick.
Julio with 16.77. Hopkins 15.72. And surprisingly, this one surprised me, Mike Evans at 15.24.
Well, that's because Mike Evans was like the only weapon that the Buccaneers really had that was a damn.
And they actually played well in the beginning of the season with Fitzmagic.
Rounding out the top 5 was Tyreek Hill, 14.79, Juju at 14.26.
Which kind of tells you what I meant about Antonio Brown here, when the number 2 in Pittsburgh is in the top 5 in the NFL, and you'll notice that Antonio Brown's name is nowhere to be listed there.
He is ninth with
Okay, so that's
1297.
well. Ben did lead the league in passing yards, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make sense that there would be 2 Steelers in the top 10. All right, so Brandon went with C.J. Anderson. I'm going to kind of expand upon that, but not by going with the obvious choice of Todd Gurley, who, in addition to C.J. Anderson's 123 and 2 scores, added 115 in a score of his own. I'm going to give my stud for the week to the Los Angeles Rams offensive line. 48 carries on the ground, 273 yards rushing as a team to 50 for Dallas.
And you know what's even more painful? The Cowboys' season average for rushing yards per game defensively, 95.
And it's even more surprising in this day and age where the rushing game, you don't really see many teams getting a lot of rushing yards. I mean, I don't even know how many 200-plus rushing yard games did we get this year. Not many.
Well,
I'm more curious to see how many games that we have where 2 teammates were each over 100 yards, because I guarantee you there probably weren't many of those.
No.
Now look, this really shouldn't surprise anybody, because if you all went on YouTube or Bleacher Report and saw the latest episode of Gridiron Heights, this was Sean McVay's game plan the entire time. He even referenced the 1918 Dayton Triangles. You should have seen this coming from that.
Can I just state that my pick for point of impact last week for the Rams was Sean McVay? I've been shot down in terms of getting a point for that, but I still think I should.
Look, I was in favor of you using that as an ace in the hole when it comes to tiebreakers, so don't go blaming me.
All right, let's flip the script and move over to the other side of the football. Let's talk about our duds for the week. Erik?
Now, usually, when you have a very high-power, very dependable quality receiver, you expect them to make big plays. Now, granted, it doesn't happen all the time, but when you got a guy driving for the win, like Big Dick Nick was in the Dome, Alshon Jeffrey, what happened to your hands? It was right there. Catch the ball. Keep things going. Screw with the rest of the playoffs for everybody else. I get you're human, but that doesn't stop you from being my dud. Just make the little catch. Just the one. That's it. You had a great game otherwise.
Brandon, yours ties in, so you'll go next.
Yeah, my dud for this week is the entire Eagles team after the first quarter. They score 14 points to take a lead, and it looks like Big Dick Nick is going to do it again. And then the next 3 quarters occur, and they proceed to get outscored 22-0 for the next 3 quarters.
Should have been 23.
Yeah.
And that way I would have covered the spread. Woo! Thank fuck I was able to have the foresight to place my first ever first half bet. Philadelphia plus 5.5. Boy, did that help salvage things.
Where did you place that bet at, Erik?
Well, where else? On MyBookie. You go to mybookie.ag, use promo code PAT, earn a 50% bonus on your first deposit. Now, even to make things even better, you don't just go to MyBookie to place your bet. You go to the Action Network, actionnetwork.com/Pat. Go download the Action Network app. Track all your bets from your favorite sports books. And if you know a thing or two about football, enter Pat's contest. Play for free for championship weekend. Answer a few questions. You get enough points, enough questions right, you could be walking away with $3,000. I'm just saying. Hashtag for the brand.
But
hashtag we need a sponsor.
Yeah, really. But yeah, I mean, how do you go from looking like, the Super Bowl team that you were last year, looking like Nick Foles can do it again, make a miracle again, to just completely and utterly crapping the bed?
Well, you go from that to looking like a bitch in a matter of a couple of hours. Sometimes that happens.
Yep, pretty much.
To the entirety of the Philadelphia Eagles organization, man cards, please. Jason, dud.
Well, my dud is somebody that I really hate to give a dud to. If you look at the stat line looks impressive, but the three of the touchdowns he threw, I think he threw three. Pretty sure he did. Well, two of the touchdowns he threw came in garbage time. And that, sir, is Mr. I gotta have enough kids to make my own football team, Phillip Rivers, who looked good. First drive drops a nice dime to Keenan Allen for 43-yard touchdown. You think that everybody starts buying in that the Chargers are going to dethrone New England, and yeah, the New England Belichick put on his hoodie and Brady pulled up his turtleneck and wasn't having none of that. Even though Rivers did go for 331 yards and 3 touchdowns, most of the touchdowns were in garbage time. He did have one interception. He just had that offense looking pitiful the first 3 quarters.
Well, I don't necessarily think that you can entirely blame this on Rivers. I think you can blame this a lot on the Chargers defense, though. And they're actually my duds for the week. It's because at one point in that game, I believe Erik said he turned it off at 21-7. I think at one point that game got all the way up to 35-7.
Oh, yeah. I was checking along on Action Network. I saw a green dot, and that's all that mattered.
Because the Los Angeles Chargers, we talked about this on the show. I almost called them the San Diego Chargers again. The Chargers had the early start on a Sunday, once again on the East Coast. We've talked about this time after time after time here on the Kickoff. West Coast teams do not do well with 1 p.m. Sunday starts. It was unfair to the Chargers to be put into this position in the first place, and they played like a West Coast team kicking off at 10 a.m.
I don't get why they do this.
I mean, for certain things, I agree. That would have been much better served, especially because it's the Patriots and the weather was pretty friendly. That would have been much better served as a 4 o'clock game.
But,
You
I
would
mean,
have still had time slots and everything. Nobody would have really cared.
well, and the other game on Sunday was the Eagles Saints, correct?
Yes.
So those two teams, yes, the Saints are in the Central, but that's a much lesser time differential. So it would have made more sense on a time zone basis to put them in the 1 o'clock slot.
Not to mention the NFL would have still adhered to their rules because at 1 o'clock it would have been noon in New Orleans. Perfect. Let's go.
Exactly.
Not that hard.
It just seemed like a general disservice to the Chargers as a team to be put in that 1 o'clock Sunday window when there were 4 different windows that could have been selected that would have put them into more of a regular time frame for them. I talked about this with several people, even off of the show, but we've talked about it many times here on the show that West Coast teams kicking off at 1 p.m. Eastern traditionally do not do well.
And not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that have a theory as to why they were put in that spot.
Well, weren't they the 1 o'clock kick against Baltimore last Sunday as well?
That's what I was going to refer to.
Yes.
They had to do it back to back.
So to pull it off once in a season is difficult enough, let alone being asked to do it twice in a row. It was unfair to the Chargers. Now, granted, the team played like they were kicking off at 1 o'clock, specifically on defense, but the NFL scheduling committee did them no favors either.
I think that should be made a rule, especially for the playoffs, so as not to have these types of disadvantages, that if there's a West Coast team in the playoffs, that they cannot play earlier than 4 o'clock.
I mean, that's in the Sunday 1 p.m. window is the only game that would start outside of their 4 o'clock window.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems stupid with the other options being there to constantly put them in that 1 o'clock window on a Sunday. It didn't seem fair. The organization, in my opinion, has a legitimate bitch about this. All right, let's move on to so that happened. Erik, you kick us off once again here. So that happened.
All righty. I gotta dedicate my so that happened to one Mr. Jalen Hurts. Okay, you were in a position, right? You were backup quarterback on a national championship losing team. Thankfully, you avoided the fast food buffet at the White House, but still, you were absolutely on par to come back right next season and get immediate revenge on the team that kicked your ass, even though you were on the sideline. All you had to do, come on down to Miami, start at Coral Gables, ball out. Yes, you're still going to be under the right offensive guy. You would have had a choice in that matter. I don't care what anybody says. You would have pulled enough sway with Coach Diaz. But no, you turned down the fun and the sun and what should be the Orange Bowl, and I'm still pissed about that to this day, years later. You turn all that down and get yourself in a particular situation and choosing Oklahoma. No article that you could write in the Players Tribune, my Alabama family, my ass. You're gonna come down and had a great year at the U. Oh Jesus. Oh, Jalen, you break my heart.
To be fair, and I hate to rub it in, Erik, but it didn't help your case when Miami had the most disappointing season of any team.
No, and I understand that. And I get that a bigger dent to that case was Coach Rick retiring out of nowhere. Shout out to you, CMR. Thank you for your service. I very legit wish you could have stayed. We were on the right track. So I understand that, but that would make it even all the more compelling with the history, with the crap season. You can turn around, and then at the very end, you're holding up a big trophy, and you can go and whip it out to Nick Saban and say, "Ha ha, bitch!"
On behalf of disappointing seasons as far as Miami goes, Auburn would like to have a word.
Yes. But I think another thing, I think to your point, Erik, I think that's what he's trying to do, but in a much more direct way. I think he thinks because of Kyler Murray leaving, I'm assuming he's got some sort of agreement where he's going to be the starter at Oklahoma. He thinks that Oklahoma gives him a better chance of getting to a national championship and beating Alabama directly.
Or so he thinks.
Well, yes, of course.
I do believe the words you're looking for there, Erik, are dun, dun, dun!
Dramatic reverb.
Jason, so that happened.
So that happened. Oklahoma Sooners are bitches.
Thank you.
The reason why I say this is basically because there's no homers to report this week, but yet I have a homer story. Oklahoma, who has a graduate transfer in Austin Kendall, that is now when I first chose this story, Oklahoma was blocking him, even though he graduated from Oklahoma and still has 2 years of eligibility left. They were blocking him from coming to West Virginia to play football. Yeah, you might wonder why that's a big deal, why it kind of goes sideways up my ass. One is I'm a West Virginia fan. If you have never listened to this show, you probably never know. If you listen to this show when the college football's going on, you'd probably think I'm an asshole because I picked West Virginia for just about everything. I was the pure definition of homer. But why I got the burr in my ass was, have you ever heard of Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield, both were transfer quarterbacks. Mayfield even transferred in the conference. And due to Oklahoma's badgering of the Big 12, he was granted an extra year of eligibility while at Oklahoma. So it's a walking contradiction. And Oklahoma did land a big name quarterback that was coming in, and that led to this transfer. But it's kind of proves that Oklahoma and Texas kind of get special privileges in the Big 12.
Is this really a surprise to you?
That's because if they realize if Oklahoma and Texas leave, there would be no more Big 12.
Yeah, there would. The Big 12 would be... The Big 12 could survive without one of them. Now, both of them leave, yeah. But if Texas was to leave, or Oklahoma, either or, the Big 12 would still flourish and still be a Power 5 conference.
I'm not so sure about that.
That is a little bit debatable depending on which one.
Also,
it would survive without Oklahoma, but without Texas, it would be problematic.
Also, if one were to leave, it would start the domino effect like we saw in the past with other conferences like the Big East.
Well, yeah, I would think that the conference hurt the hardest by that would probably be the Mountain West or Conference USA.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think the American Athletic would be out of the scope of the Big 12. Then again, West Virginia was a Big East / American Athletic Conference.
Well, not necessarily, because one team that I've been... Actually, two teams that I've been saying should go to the Big 12 are in the American.
I believe we've had this conversation on the show before in Houston and SMU.
Yes.
And actually, on a sidebar, I noticed this, in my infinite wisdom. When we did our pregame episodes, or pre-season episodes, and this is how ironic. This is why they call me the Ginger Damas. Who was my pick to be the non-Power 5 team to cause a ruckus? Does anybody remember?
Houston?
That's correct. Who is now the head coach at Houston?
Yeah, true.
Dana Holgorsen, the former coach of West Virginia.
Hey, if you keep running in circles, you'll end up right where you need to be at the beginning.
Brandon, so that happened.
I think this is one of the first time. Now, granted, mine is kind of, if you want to say that it's college football related, it's kind of both. So, but I think this is one of the first times that all of our so that happens have been college related so far. But Kyler Murray has declared for the NFL draft. Now, he hasn't officially declared that he is going to play football. He is still basically hedging his bets there, saying pretty much based on where I get picked, I'll decide where I want to go, which it'll be interesting to see how that impacts his draft stock. But first off, where do you guys think he should go? And secondly, does this impact how both on the college and pro side, how football and baseball teams handle these dual sport players?
I'll kind of interject a little bit. For the second question, not really. Because believe it or not, many people don't remember even Jameis Winston was on the Florida State's baseball team.
You're right.
As well.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, he was quite a successful reliever, had a great fastball, but that was just kind of discounted. So I don't think on the college level that will be much of an effect. If anything, it would give college baseball a boost, because outside of the College World Series in Omaha, that's not really talked about.
Which is a sad state of affairs, because college baseball has actually gotten thoroughly more entertaining over the years here, especially now, in my opinion, as they're allowing the kids to use the wooden bats again.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. When they started transitioning from the metal bats to the special metal bats that acted like wood ones, now to the wood ones, it's been fantastic because it's now more real baseball.
And also, it's an easier transition to both the summer leagues and eventually into the MLB system.
Like that was always my biggest problem with college baseball was the fact that they were using those goddamn aluminum bats.
Well, back in 2010, they switched to the hybrid bats, which was a little closer to the wood.
Granted, and when they started to switch away, like Erik said, when they started to switch away from the straight aluminum bats to using the more aluminum wood hybrids, the combos kind of, that's when I started paying much more attention here. I mean, I couldn't tell you like which prospects in college baseball are going to land in the MLB because honestly, it's such a crapshoot with the minor league baseball system.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That being said, I think the quality of game and the kind of games that they're having in college have markedly improved ever since the transition has been made.
Oh, of course. And going to the first question, if you kind of look at his path and see where he would go, I would rather see him in the NFL because, let's face it, shout out to Billy Beane, and the A's have a good front office buoyed by him, but let's be real. The A's aren't really one of the top MLB franchises. They're also another team looking to get out of Oakland. I think outside of any kind of all-star event, or if he would play in the futures game, he'd be in the minors for a couple of seasons, and he would be mired in anonymity. So I think for him, granted it's a much bigger risk to his body, but the NFL would be a bit of a bigger payoff going down the road.
Well, that's the thing about the difference between baseball and football is that football, it's a bigger toll on your body, but you get more guaranteed money up front, and you're in the pros, the true pros, right away. Whereas in baseball, it's more of a grind to your body than the direct impact of football. Yes, you're in the minors for at least a couple of years, and it's not as much of a guarantee. But if you make it, you make a lot more money in baseball as a big-time major leaguer than you would in the NFL.
Yeah, but if you make it...
Oh, no, of course, that's the big if.
Yeah, and say he spends 5 years in the minors, then he comes up. Not everybody is going to get contracts like a Mike Trout.
Oh, no, of
like
course
a
not.
Bryce Harper. So even then, yes, you have a much higher ceiling, but it is so much more exponential in baseball than it is in football. In football, you have a much higher floor.
Yes.
Well, that was going to be kind of my thought process here, is based on the fact that he is the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. I think that there's going to be an excitement to see him in a National Football League franchise right now. So where do I think he would go? I think he's going to be a mid-first round pick. I saw Mel Kiper Jr.'s ESPN Plus thing where he discussed his first round picks for this year. And I think Kiper has him going to the Dolphins at like 16.
Ooh.
But that was part of my second question. Do you think that him not distinctly saying that I am going to the NFL, do you think that drops his draft stock at all?
I think heard that... Oh, you go ahead, Harry.
I was going to say, I think that if a team is interested enough in him, it's not going to matter because they're going to feel that they can put together an offer that'll convince him to pick football over baseball.
Sure.
Yeah, because I have heard that if he was 100% committed to the NFL, he would be a first-round pick. But as he currently stands, where he's kind of sitting on the fence, now they're talking second or third.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Yeah, but I think with Harry, I do agree. Now that he is in the draft, and if they can find a way to get him to the combine, a lot of general managers are really going to start thinking, because if they can get him in the interview process, not even to commit, but to kind of maybe do some leading questions into a kind of a sales pitch, that'll dramatically affect that decision. Because the A's, all the reports of them offering $15 million, those have been debunked. So at most, they'd be offering him what, maybe 10?
Yeah,
So,
I don't know what the. I don't think there really is a distinctive cap on how much you can pay for draft picks, but like I think there is kind of like a there is a ceiling to it.
yeah, with the rookie wage scale, where you draft and all this and that, there is that little bit of a cap. Plus, if he's not drafted in the first round, that automatically affects the kind of contract lengthwise you can offer him. So there's a lot of number crunching going on from both the A's as an organization and from these NFL teams as organizations.
If I'm not mistaken, to Eric's point there, I believe first round is 5, anything after is 3.
One more question before we move on. Do you think we'll ever see another Deion Sanders or Bo Jackson?
No.
I think I agree.
In terms of the physicality that these sports take out of these athletes' bodies now, I don't think that we're going to ever get to the point that we see somebody that's playing football when football season's on and then is able to transition to baseball or vice versa. Just because I think that there is too much of a talent gap now in the varying levels of the two franchises. Could we see somebody go from one sport to another like Tim Tebow is attempting to do? Yes. But the reason Tebow's trying to do baseball is because he washed out as a professional football player.
That was actually going to be a secondary so that happened for me. The Mets have said that he's going to be on their 40-man roster for spring training.
And of course he is, because he sells tickets.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And that's great for him because of the grind that he's been in the minor leagues and he's been working up through the system. He's proving to be a better baseball player than a quarterback. But honestly, even if he didn't have all of that pride in being a quarterback, he had the potential to be what we're seeing out of Taysom Hill now, minus the actual ability to throw a football.
Jason, you've been pretty quiet here. What are your thoughts on this?
Fuck Kyler Murray.
Thanks. Helpful. Okay, I guess that's all we're going to get there. Brandon mentioned that everybody up to this point had selected a college story for So That Happened. Usually, I'm the resident college apologist on this show, and the rest of you guys are talking NFL. Today, I flipped the script, and I have the NFL story for you, and it's probably the biggest NFL story to come out of the divisional round, to me anyway, and that is the story about Kansas City Chief offensive lineman Jeff Allen. For the snowstorm that hit the city of Kansas City on Sunday or Saturday before the game, Jeff Allen was on his way to the game on Saturday and proceeded to get stuck and proceeded to get rescued by a homeless man. I do not like the Chiefs. I do not care for the Chiefs. Robert Taylor can suck one.
Fuck Robert Taylor.
It is not, and it never will be, Mahomes time on this show.
Oh, yes, it is.
No. Yeah,
I know. It's coming Mahomes. Shut the fuck up, Erik. Anyway. All right. As I would say, but I have to give all credit to Jeff Allen here. Did something he did not have to do. To the man that rescued him from the snowbank that his car got stuck in on the way to the game, gifted the guy tickets to the AFC title game this Sunday. Class act by Jeff Allen. You guys' thoughts on the story? Anything to add?
Fuck Jeff Allen.
Leave it to the linemen, the unsung heroes, to go out there and do these kinds of things and stuff behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Well, because they're used to it. They're used to being the guys that no one pays attention to.
it's still a cool story all the same.
Agreed.
I barely knew the name Jeff Allen. If you asked me to name a Kansas City lineman outside of Eric Fisher, I probably couldn't do it.
I think that doctor, but I think he plays on the defensive line, doesn't he?
I couldn't name the starting lineman on their defensive side either. I don't pay enough attention to the Chiefs. We'll talk more about what's going to happen. We're going to talk more about what's going to happen with Kansas City a little bit later on in the show when we do our series predictions for the conference.
Laurent Duvernay Tardif.
What he said. Mostly because I'm not sure what he said.
No, that's his name, Laurent Duvernay Tardif. Québécois.
Beans and disease to you too, Eric.
Is that the MD that's on their defensive line?
Yes.
Okay. At least I got that much correct. I got that going for me. I'm not hitting complete triple zeros over here. So let's talk about point of impact from last week, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. The Kansas City versus Indianapolis game, the point of impact player was selected to officially be Damian Williams. I actually outright selected Williams. Eric took the Kansas City running backs. Since I picked Williams specifically, I got the point. The New England and Chargers game, we've all agreed that the MVP for that game was Sony Michel. Eric took James White. He got half a point for White's performance out of the backfield, but not a full point because of the fact that Michel was actually the one who had the big game on the ground running for 3 touchdowns. The New Orleans-Philadelphia game, we've officially decided to award the player of that game to Michael Thomas. Eric selected Michael Thomas. He gets a full point. The Rams and Cowboys game, we officially gave it to C.J. Anderson. Brandon had Todd Gurley, which sucks to be Brandon.
Yeah.
Right position,
wrong
player.
guy.
Pretty much the same thing as Eric, just without the receiving yards to back it up.
Yep.
At least my player caught some passes.
15 of them, a divisional playoff record, I believe Jason pointed out to me before we started the show. Jason, is that correct?
That is correct.
So, an impressive performance by James White. He looks to reiterate that performance once again at 6 o'clock on Sunday. However, instead, we talk 3:30 on Sunday, as it will be Fox for the Los Angeles Rams at the New Orleans Saints. Eric, who is your impact Ram for this game?
Mine is going to be Jared Goff. Can he overcome fading down the stretch in his last performance in the Superdome, which was over that wild and crazy 45-35 game? And can he really get back to that early season form? He's gone a few games without a touchdown pass, and he's looked not quite rookie year bad, but definitely more mediocre. While the Saints are proving to be a tougher, more intimidating defense as the time goes, you can still get into a shootout with this team. It's going to be tougher. But Goff really needs to step up in the passing game. That way, any sort of ground performance will be a bonus rather than a necessity.
Brandon.
My impact player, I'm going to go impact player and then one extra. My impact player, I have to agree with Eric. It's got to be Jared Goff. Not only is it, like Eric said, he started to fade down the stretch in the game last week, but also this is the furthest they've ever gotten in the playoffs. This is his first time in a championship game, and it's in the Superdome, which is notoriously hard to go into and win. So he's going to have to keep his nerves intact. He's going to have to really focus if they want to win this game. And also, I'm going to say an impact person as well is going to be Sean McVay. Because same as Goff, It's his first time in an NFC Championship game, and they're really going to have to be focused and show that they're for real in this game.
Jason.
They got to be who we thought they were.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let him off the hook. Jason, who's your impact Ram?
My impact Ram. I'm going to go with C.J. Anderson. Ty Gurley's knee is being reported as not being 100%. I think that they're going to use Gurley sparingly. So I'm going to go with Anderson to have another big day.
I have a very bold prediction to make here for my impact player because I'm going to do something that we usually don't do here. I'm going defense. The Rams do not win a shootout against the Saints. The Rams do win a defensive game, and it is on the shoulders of one Aaron Donald to make sure that it is said defensive game. Donald has to control the line of scrimmage and has to put pressure on Drew Brees and to keep Alvin Kamara and why am I drawing a blank on his name?
Melvin Ingram?
Mark Ingram the third.
All right. Right.
Melvin Gordon. Mark Ingram the third silenced. It is going to be imperative that the Los Angeles defense dominates the line of the scrimmage if the Rams have any chance of winning this game. Therefore, my impact Ram is NFL sack leader Aaron Donald. Brandon, let's move over to the other side here. Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. Who's your impact Saint?
My impact Saint is going to be Michael Thomas. He has to have another huge performance like he had this past week against the Eagles. Obviously, Drew Brees is going to be another big guy to look out for, but if Michael Thomas can have another huge game like he had this past week, then the Saints are going to be on their way to another Super Bowl.
Jason.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because the direction I want to go in, I will not get any points.
Sean Payton?
Because, yes. I'm going to go Sean Payton due to his motivational tactics of putting the Lombardi Trophy and $250,000 and telling the Saints to win 3 goddamn games.
I thought it was only 201,000.
Close enough.
It was 250, I thought.
Trying to continue Bountygate, I see.
No, he wasn't telling people to go after people with that. He was telling them to.
In a 1B, I'm going to go with Hill. I think that they're going to line him up in various formations to try to get looks that you typically wouldn't get, and he's the ultimate Swiss Army knife utility player for the Saints offense.
I just found out that there's a very strong chance that my original impact player isn't going to play, so I can't pick him. My original impact player on this game was going to be Benjamin Watson, but rumors are circulating that Watson has been ruled out. Therefore,
appendicitis.
Yep, they said he'll be back. If they win, he'll be back for the Super Bowl.
Therefore, I'm going to talk about the League of Unheralded Heroes that Drew Brees has, and I'm going to discuss his wide receiving core outside of Michael Thomas because I think that the Rams are going to try to focus on Michael Thomas. Therefore, my impact Ram for this game, or my impact Saint for this game is going to be Keith Kirkwood.
Maybe. That's a possibility.
I think that the Rams are going to have Marcus Peters focused on Michael Thomas and try to shut him down. Whether or not Marcus Peters shows up for this game is an entirely different story. We'll see what happens. Inconsistency, thy name is Marcus. That being said, Kirkwood and Tommy Lee Lewis are two of the names that have been out of absolutely nowhere this year who have helped combine to help Drew Brees become once again one of the NFL's top quarterbacks and the NFL's most accurate quarterback this year. Kirkwood and Lewis both have to have big games. I think Kirkwood has a bigger game, even if the Rams attempt to shut down Michael Thomas. Erik, who do you got?
I'm actually going with a little bit of a tandem. I was originally going to say just Mark Ingram because for Drew Brees to be comfortable and trying to establish themselves as an identity of a defensive team, they need to be able to open up the running game and have the Rams defensively not crowd the box. That will open up routes, everything for the receivers. But it's not just Ingram himself. Alvin Kamara, he had a solid first half of that game. Rather solid second half because he wasn't really properly utilized. Not a lot of plays ran to him last week. But if they go into that situation offensively again, and he can take advantage of the few touches that he does get, give himself the opportunity to get even more touches, tempo. More things will open up. Not to mention, you saw the dime that he was able to catch from Taysom Hill. Come on now.
I'm going to state for the record, Erik, that since you picked a combo instead of one, you're only eligible for a half point there.
That's fair. I'll take a half point.
I get full points though, right?
Depending on how Sean Payton's performance does.
Well, I also took Taysom Hill, who with Ben Watson's going to be out, is going to be in that utility player slot tight end position.
Then how about I write down Hill as your impact player then, so that way you have more of an eligibility chance. Fair?
Okay, we'll go with that.
Okay. We move to the 6 o'clock game on Sunday as the AFC Championship sees the New England Patriots traveling to Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Jason, you lead us off with those bastard Patriots.
I'm going to take the bastard Patriots. I'm going to take Tom Brady and his beautiful turtleneck, and maybe he'll get a high five by somebody on the sidelines because, I mean, he is the greatest quarterback in the game currently. You had 15 weeks to prepare for this matchup again. Him and Belichick, and the fact that he, after the game, when he was interviewed by the world's shortest reporter, he pointed out that, that chip on his shoulder is still there, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to come out and throw for like 1 billion yards and 12 touchdowns.
I think this is going to be a very close game. Therefore, I think that it's going to come down to the brand, as it were. And in this particular instance, I'm referring to Stephen Gostkowski. If this game comes down to the fourth quarter and it is a kicker's battle of who can hit the clutch kick, I trust Gostkowski a lot more than I do anybody that's kicked for Kansas City lately, now that they no longer have Cairo Santos.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but Butker's been a good kicker for them, but again, you gotta go with Gostkowski.
Although the big clutch kicker came up short this past week.
In fairness, Indianapolis was never really in that game against Kansas City.
True. But Vinatieri did miss a few.
And how dare you disrespect Vinny?
Besides, who else could knock that patch of snow off the upright like he did?
Parky.
Fair.
Parky. To be fair, Parky would have knocked the snow off of all three. Erik, who's your standout? Who's your impact player for the New England Patriots this Sunday?
Given how Andy Reid is a king about making adjustments, and I'm going to tease this. If he faces a team that he's faced in the regular season, In the playoffs, he's 14-3. Now, I say that to say this. It's not going to be on the entire Patriots defense. I am really looking at their defensive backfield. And yes, I'm going with another combo. How can they match up with all of the weapons that Kansas City has at receiver to, like they did in the first game, help to contribute to confusing Patrick Mahomes? How many different looks are they going to have along with that front seven? How many disguises are they going to pull? And then how will they actually react in coverage? Because the Colts held him without a touchdown pass and lost. You can slow him down, give the ball back to Tom Brady. You've got a chance to take the team and him to what would regrettably be another Super Bowl.
What's the old Kenny mainline? You can't stop them. You can only hope to contain them.
Yep, you'd be correct.
Brandon.
My impact player, I'm going with another guy that had a big week this past week. I'm gonna go with Sony Michel. If they can have a good ground game and if they can have a good running game, that's gonna put a lot of pressure on the Chiefs' defense, which is gonna open up holes for Brady, who can basically throw a ball through any sort of defense. But especially if he can get some holes in that defense, he's going to tear them to shreds.
I'm going to make a bold prediction right now, Brandon, and say that you're wrong by saying that if the Patriots win this game, James White has the bigger performance than Sony Michel does, because the Chiefs will be keyed in on Sony Michel and not so much on James White.
True. I'll give you that.
Fuck Sony Michel.
Kansas City's impact player here. I start this one, and you know what?
You know you got to do it.
you got it.
You're going to do it.
I don't want to. I don't want the point if I'm correct either.
I'll take it if you
I'll take it too. I think we're probably all in agreement on this one.
I'm not.
You know what? I'm going with Tyreek Hill.
I'm in agreement with that.
So it's 2 against 2, I guess, then.
Yeah.
I think that Tyreek Hill is the deciding factor here. I think Tyreek Hill is going to have to break at least 2 long touchdown passes. Because
it's all going to come down to the yak.
Yeah, the Chiefs are not going to win a low-scoring game against the Patriots. You know how we talked earlier about how the Rams win a low-scoring game against the Saints, not a shootout? The Chiefs win a shootout against the Patriots, not a low-scoring game. Because I would trust Tom Brady in a low-scoring game far more than I would trust Patrick Mahomes in a low-scoring game. That being said, if we can have Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and the rest, Sammy Watkins, much though it pains me to say that because of him being a former Bill, Kelvin Benjamin, 2 different Buffalo Bills fucking me over in Kansas City. Anyways.
Okay, once they scatter to different teams across the league and they win championships and you continue not to, like me, you just get used to it. And then some of them even go on to become offensive coordinators. No, I'm not bitter. I want to punch people, but I'm not bitter.
Just real quick here to wrap this up here. Jason, since you're in agreement with me here, I'm going to have you speak next as well here. Buy or sell that the Chiefs win a shootout, not a low-scoring game?
I want to sell that because the Chiefs aren't going to win. Period. I think it's going to.
Official predictions leader.
I think it's going to. Well, let me finish. Calm your tits.
Okay.
Get them under control. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a very clock management game on the side of the Patriots. Brady and Belichick have prepared for that. They know they can't get in a shootout with Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I think it's going to be that ground and pound, grinding the clock down, long, substantial drives, a lot of dink and dunk passing to get first downs. So I think that the only way the Chiefs have a chance is if they try to have a track meet with New England, which I don't see Belichick happening.
All right, Erik, go ahead. Robert Taylor will love you forever.
Shall we do our little thing, Erik?
Yes, indeed we can.
Do you want me to ask?
If you guys are going to stroke each other on air, I'm going to go ahead and sign off.
No, shut up, Jason.
No, I'll ask.
Okay.
I'm looking up at the clock, and I can't quite read it. Brandon, what time is it?
I believe it's Mahomes' time.
It is. Hashtag it's coming Mahomes. But from my perspective, I'm going to see this, and I'm going to talk about this more and get it together, but given the weather, and given how he performed in the weather last week, Mahomes' 5 worst games by QBR are the 5 coldest games he's played in. Now, again, I'll get into more specifics in the weather later on, but I think that's going to be a factor. Now, if he can improve upon his performance in the snow last week, be comfortable, and hopefully Kansas City's had 1 or 2 outdoor practices throughout the course of this week to help get him acclimated. If he can do that and help with the mitigated level of speed that he's going to have, while it won't be a shootout, it will be a moderately scored game, and he gives himself a great chance. But if the Patriots can exploit his weaknesses like the Colts tried to, then it's going to be problematic.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, he and I'll put a little extra +1 for Andy Reid here. But this is another big moment for Mahomes to really prove that he is what everyone, especially all the Chiefs fans, are saying he is. You know, he's beaten Brady once already this year. Can he do it again?
Won that game.
Oh wait, you're right. But he's seen what New England can do. Can he make the adjustments to be able to beat them this time around? And this is going to be a big defining moment for him in his young career.
You guys want to know why I'm not picking Patrick Mahomes here?
Why?
Fuck Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, let's move on. The reason I'm not picking Patrick Mahomes for this year is because, quite simply put, I do not trust what basically amounts to a rookie quarterback against Bill Belichick in a playoff.
Oh, I agree. That's why I'm saying he is the key player, win or lose. Either he's going to have one of his Mahomes time type games and the Chiefs are going to be able to pull this out, or he's going to show that he's a rookie quarterback and, like what Erik said, fall under the pressure of the cold weather, and that will lead to Kansas City's doom.
See, I don't even think that the weather's going to be that big of a factor here, despite the fact that I know about the snowstorms in the Midwest area. Believe me, living in a Midwest state myself, I'm subject to them. We're expecting we're recording on Friday night, for those wondering, due to, well, I'll explain that a little bit later on towards the end of the show. But we're recording on Friday night. Between Saturday and Sunday here in the Midwest, it is estimated that anywhere between 1 foot to 3 feet of snow is going to fall in certain places. The area where I'm at specifically up here is Ohio, and we're expecting 1.5 feet. So Erik mentioned the cold weather. I'm going to stand by the statement that I've made here. Yes, Patrick Mahomes has had an absolutely fantastic season overall, top to bottom. It physically pains me to give the guy credit, but I am going to. That being said, and we've seen it many times over, he made a veteran, one of the NFL's elite quarterbacks in Phillip Rivers, look inadequate at times and barely competent at others. Most of what, like Jason said earlier, most of what Rivers got in terms of his stat line was in garbage time after the game was already sealed away. If the Chiefs find themselves down early to the Patriots, Belichick is going to scheme up stuff and going to send the houses after Mahomes and his running back and his wide receivers to disrupt that offense as best as he can. And I feel like New England's game plan is going to set Mahomes up for a very long Sunday night at Arrowhead.
I could agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Erik.
Yes.
Get it together.
My get it together, as I teased, Kansas City meteorologists. Just a mere 48 hours ago, the dominant headlines: Arctic blast, 15 below zero wind chill, coldest game in the history of Arrowhead. Then dramatically, yes, even with the snowstorm, estimated temperature at kickoff for Sunday's game, 33 degrees. Now, I know a weatherman has said, he was a weatherman from Washington, D.C. back in the day. He stated, predicting the weather for even just a few days out is harder than putting a man on the moon. And we haven't done that in some 40 years. But still, you're predicting all of this and all these drastic conditions and wind and snow. Now you're amounting to a 50-degree swing in temperatures over the span of 2 days. I get inaccuracies. I live in Florida where the weather changes every 5 minutes, and that's on a good day. But for all the impact on this game, and especially the wild swings on the totals, for Christ's sake, meteorologists, get it together.
Jason.
My get it together actually is going back to a topic that Brandon spoke on earlier, and it's going to be Kyler Murray. You need to decide what you're going to do, bro. Either you're going to be a baseball player or a football player. You need to get it together. Pick one and flourish.
I'll agree with that.
Honestly, given the fact that he's a Heisman Trophy winner, he may be better off choosing baseball because we've seen history not be kind to Heisman Trophy in the NFL.
Well, I would put two Heisman Trophy winners in MLB.
Oh God, what's his name? The Florida State quarterback,
Charlie Ward.
Thank you.
No, he wasn't in baseball.
Tim Tebow.
Yeah,
No,
Tebow.
he went to
He was in the NBA.
Yeah.
Tim Tebow or
Yeah,
Kyler
Tebow.
Murray.
Yeah.
Why did I forget Tebow?
Because he's irrelevant now.
Maybe Florida fans just want to forget that 2008 team. Church boys and convicts, apparently. You took a cue from Miami, huh, Erik?
Well, hey, at least we can all start off by saying a priest, a racist, and a murderer walked onto a football field. And after all the stuff that we've done, we can't even say that. And look at what happened to your coach. I mean, yeah.
Brandon, get it together.
My get it together for this week is college football. And yes, it is related to the...
Tread lightly.
It is related to the almighty playoff to an extent. But can you guys figure out what I'm about to reference? Something that had to happen this week.
It's probably something we discussed like a week or two ago, and you're just now catching up to the chat.
No. A record 135 non-seniors, underclassmen, declared for the NFL draft.
Damn!
College football, you need to either create a real playoff system or do something to make these players actually want to stay rather than going to play real ball in the NFL.
I don't know about this real ball business, but
It is.
I actually did see the story about the 135 underclassmen declaring eligibility. That being said, I do think that we're going to see a significant portion of that take away their declarations before the draft. Once they meet with the scouts, once they go through the combine and everything, I would not be surprised to see a higher than normal number coming out of college football this year. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that always declare early and then they end up backing out.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that, but this record broke the record that was set last year, so it seems to be rising every year now, and that is not a good sign for college football. It is showing that these players would much rather go and make money and actually be rewarded for playing well than playing in meaningless games.
Now, I will say this to Brandon's point. Number one, look at all of the immediate hype surrounding Trevor Lawrence. We talked about, and I've mentioned, how executives saying, oh, if he could come out right now, he would be the number 1 overall pick as a true freshman. Number two, these next couple of years are going to be very telling because not just from the perspective of the NFL, with these other leagues like the AAF starting this season, and especially if that gets a year under its belt, if these players will see alternatives and see these other leagues as a springboard to the NFL, which for a couple of them they're trying to be, that would give more incentive, even if they don't even declare for the NFL draft, or they declare they don't like where they stand, well, they just leave college and go and play in one of these other leagues. That would lessen college football potentially. I don't know how much, but that would further Brandon's point. The more alternatives there are, the more viable the alternatives, that would put at least a very small crimp into things.
I can see where you're coming from in terms of the AAF, the XFL, and the Freedom Football League, which, again, I don't think sees the light of day as far as playing an actual game.
I am not counting that whatsoever. Mm-mm.
That being said, I do agree with you in that I do think that the more options that are out there, the more likely we are to see an effect on the players in college football. Therefore, I would not be surprised to see the NCAA pass out some kind of legislation where you have to stay a minimum of 3 seasons.
I thought that was the case already.
That's the current rule. You have to be 3 years removed from your graduating high school class.
Well, then, what are you saying that they're going to do to incentivize these players that aren't staying already, though? What is there that can be done other than short of pay to play? What else can be done?
Well, at least for some of them, actually make it to where they're actually playing for something. I mean, a lot of these players.
Okay, to your point, Brandon, you want to play for national championship, don't go to Louisiana Tech.
Well, some players don't have. There's a lot of players that don't have that choice, where they're not highly touted coming out of high school. They don't get the big name schools looking at them, but then they excel in college, and instead of playing in meaningless games, they're able to go into the NFL and not only make money, but actually be playing for something.
It's basically like a restructuring to where it's similar to FCS Division II, Division III. Mm-hmm. You do have some situations where certain conferences have 1 or 2 bowl games, like the Celebration Bowl in the FCS. Do something more like that, but you have an overarching playoff. Mm-hmm. That being short of pay to play, you're right. That would be the primary solution. If you can't manage that, then you are going to have to go deeper down that rabbit hole.
Because, I mean, I haven't looked too much into the numbers, and I don't think anyone has really done a big study on this, but I think a lot of the big-time college basketball players, if they have an opportunity to win a national championship, they may stay an extra year instead of jumping to the NBA.
Not entirely.
Strongly disagree at major universities. At universities that aren't necessarily your traditional powerhouses, i.e., your Gonzagas, your teams in the Big East, Villanova being an example, although they had 3 freshmen declare for the draft last year after winning the national title.
Well, that was after winning the national championship. They got there. They accomplished what they wanted.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. That you're already seeing that with those subversions now. You have a basketball player take $1 million internship and already be signed and set up to have a shoe deal, so when he's eligible, he can go right into the NBA. The NBA expanding their footprint with the G League. The G League upping their salaries to say, hey, if you want to play right out of high school, rather than go to a college for a year, come play in the G League for a year, then get your call up to the NBA. So with that, they should be looking at something in college basketball like the rumored 2 or none system that they want to implement, so that way that can fix that. Whereas for the football, it's much, much different. If these options pan out, you're going to see football players take more and more of a route as basketball players are able to do. Again, with slight tweaks.
There's too many variables at play in terms of the amount of players that are going to declare early for these drafts here. I think that I would rather look at the finalized numbers of how many of these declared names actually stayed declared by the time the draft rolled around. Because out of that 100, what did you say it was, 135?
Yeah. Well,
I would say at least a third of that, at least 40, will pull their names out of contention for the draft.
How many pulled out last year? Because I think when I read the article, it said 110 or somewhere around there for last year.
I would have to find those numbers, and that's not something I'm going to have time to do while we're on air here, since we're about to wrap up with our predictions. But I can try to have those numbers for you by the next time we do a show.
Okay.
All right. My get it together goes to... Hold on. I have to find my cue here. I lost my place on the chat because we spent time talking about this college football discussion. My get it together goes to Jerry Jones. And specifically the Scott Linehan situation with him firing the offensive coordinator in Dallas. Offense wasn't your problem during the course of these 2 playoff games. I would say that if you guys had a problem with the course of your playoff games this year, it falls more on the shoulders of your head coach, Jason Garrett, than it did on Scott Linehan. Because you could clearly see, and we talked about this earlier when I talked about the Rams offensive lineman being my stud for the week, 273 yards rushing to 50, and yet they kept giving Ezekiel Elliott the ball against the Rams. They kept giving Ezekiel Elliott the ball against the Seahawks, even though the Seahawks were shutting down Zeke as well. Prescott is the one who won that game for them against Seattle. Prescott's the one that kept them as close into the game against the Rams as they were, only losing by 8 points. I don't think that this is necessarily just a Scott Linehan thing. I think that this is more of a Jason Garrett thing. And I think that there are a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans that will agree that while it's nice to be able to get to these divisional playoff games, this team is not going to go much further with Jason Garrett in charge.
Well, I think a lot of that, where the blame goes, depends upon who's making the play calls on the offense.
But I wouldn't be surprised if that's Garrett having a hand in that as well.
I don't necessarily know, because if you look at Garrett's body of work, if you match that to Cowboys' expectations, I agree. But at the same time, say you get rid of Garrett, who are you going to bring in
that's a big issue?
Able to deal with
Mike McCarthy.
You really think Mike McCarthy's going to put up with Jerry Jones?
I think that to have the Dallas Cowboys job, I think Jerry Jones, in order to have a coach with the national clout that McCarthy does, I believe that Jones would be willing to be a little bit more hands-off.
Come on. You're talking about a man who has a weekly radio show.
Not only that, but also Mike McCarthy, I would think at least, yes, the Cowboys have some pieces, but over the last 20 years, they have hardly done anything, and they just seem to be cursed at this point. Does he really want to go and risk his legacy in the dumpster fire that is Dallas?
Plus, you're also dealing with, yes, an extremely simplistic offense, but a limited quarterback. You saw how things were even wearing down in Green Bay with Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, who is more talented and has a much better arm and a lot of those tangible qualities. So that would be taking an even further step backwards. I don't like the timing of this situation because it's hard to find a replacement, but at the same time, Linehan was your biggest contributor. Now the real question is, if they do find someone to make the proper tweaks, can Dak step up?
Mm-hmm.
If he can, he'll get a good chunk of money. If not, then he'll be destined to be a career backup elsewhere.
He'll be Tony Romo 2.0.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to state for the record, I fully expect Dak not to be the starter in Dallas come 2020. The start of the 2020 season, not the 2019 season, the one that'll start in September, but the following September, 2020, Dak Prescott will not be the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
Hey, I can't argue Harry's point. That's extremely realistic.
All right, let me get the notebook out because it's time for our predictions. We go to the conference championship round of things here. Brandon and myself both went 3-1 straight up, 4-0 against the spread last week.
Boom.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Now we can.
I can hear you.
Okay, just making sure. I had some mic issues there for a second. Erik, you were 0-1, 0-2. You were 1-3 against the spread, 2-2 straight up.
Oh, yeah, Andrew Luck, Will Lutz, Sean Payton. I would have hit all of y'all with the 2x4. Oh,
Jason 2-2, 1-3 straight up, or 2-2 straight up, 1-3 against the spread.
Yeah, my spreads were off.
All right, so based on what I'm seeing on ESPN, both of these games are at the 3 line. It is 3.5. It is 3.5 for the NFC when the Rams go to the Superdome to take on the Saints.
3.5 for the Saints.
3.5 for the Saints. Home favorites in both games.
I think I have to take the Saints here. Yes, the Rams are a good team, but like I mentioned before, they're a young team. It's the Superdome. The Saints have been playing great. Yeah, Saints are going to win this one.
Do they cover 3.5?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Final score.
I'll say 28-17.
Erik, NFC title game.
As soon as I saw that these lines were set at 3 apiece and they haven't hovered much, this would be way too dangerous. I'm probably going to be kicking myself for this. But from what I have seen from the Saints the past month, they've been a much more defensive team. Their offense has struggled, even at the Superdome. With everything going on, I'm picking the Rams.
Final score.
24-20.
So they actually cover the 3.5 in the other direction.
Mm-hmm. Barely.
If they would have been favorites, they would have covered.
Mm-hmm.
Jason.
I'm taking the Rams 45-42.
I'm with Jason here. I think this game is a shootout. I think that this game is going to come down to another offensive fireworks show like what we saw in the regular season between these two teams. 45-35 there. I don't think it goes quite that high here, though. I think the Saints win and advance to the Super Bowl 38-31, thus covering the 3.5. In the AFC Championship game, it is Kansas City -3 against New England. Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see the Chiefs win, but I think Reed shows what he always does, and Belichick shows what he always does, and the Patriots win. I'm gonna go 35-21.
Erik?
Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have not won an AFC championship game on the road since 2006. Young quarterbacks, especially in the playoffs, do not fare well against Tom Brady. However, this Patriots team is only 3-5 outside of Foxborough this season. With the weather being now as favorable as it is, for the first time since 1970, the Kansas City Chiefs will be in the Super Bowl. And for the first time ever, and this is why I had the hashtag It's Coming Mahomes, the Lamar Hunt Trophy will reside in Kansas City. Chiefs take it 22-16.
Did you say 22 or 22?
22, double deuce, 16.
So they're gonna get a 2-point conversion?
Something weird is going to happen. It might be a field goal fest.
Yeah, I was about to say Butker kicks 5 field goals.
Fair enough.
Jason?
Pats 28-24.
I actually have I'm more along the lines of Erik with this in terms of the score line, but I have it flipped the other way. I do not trust what basically amounts to a rookie quarterback against Bill Belichick and Tom Brady in an AFC Championship game. I respect the fact that he had his opportunity to play Week 17 of last year, but that was a Week 17 garbage game against the Oakland Raiders last year. And while his numbers this year are impressive, the biggest games of his season this year, he lost. New England, San Diego on a Thursday night, and the Monday night slugfest with New Orleans.
You did it again, by the way.
What did I do? Pick? Well, if I would have went first, you would have picked the same people with me.
No. You said the wrong city.
And I called San Diego again.
Yay.
God damn it. Old habits die.
Oh, I know. I agree.
Los Angeles, whatever.
I still want to call them the St. Louis Rams.
New England 24, Kansas City 20. Patriots win and set up what I've said from the preseason on this show. Patriots Saints in the Super Bowl. Gentlemen, I have a question.
Yes.
Are we skipping next week?
Yes. Unless you want to do a bonus show after dark.
Unless you just want to do like the review of do a quick review of the championship game.
And maybe a preview of the AAF?
Well, I thought we were doing that after the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Or we could do that. Or we could do a recap of our preseason predictions and how everything shake out.
Shook up.
I mean, yeah, I could go back and listen to the college episode, but unfortunately, I don't think we ever really got an NFC and an official playoff prediction episode on tape.
We didn't on tape, but I think we sent our predictions to you.
We did.
I would have to search.
Yes, you would.
I don't know that I have those. I'll have to look into that. I'm going to state for the record that odds are, let's be honest here, people, the Pro Bowl game is the one next Sunday. No one fucking cares.
Plus, for us wrestling fans, it's Royal Rumble weekend anyway.
And for me, it's like NHL All-Star Game and the Pro Bowl, and I also believe it'll be right around the time of the NBA.
I think the NBA is like a couple of weeks after that, if I remember correctly.
So, yeah, I've got other things to do that day, and
all right, fuck, let's not do it
for tutoring. So,
the kickoff is going to take a Pro Bowl break, but I'm going to break the news to Jason and Brandon now of something that Erik already knows. We will discuss the conference championship games by doing studs and duds on the following Wednesday's episode.
Okay.
Erik, shall we tell them what we discussed and make it official?
Oh, God.
It is the Kickoff Super Prediction Spectacular. We are going prop bets up.
Oh, yes, you told us about this.
Yeah, you told us about this. Let's go.
Well, let's make it official to the listeners. We will be predicting, all four of us, 20 different things about the Super Bowl. Everything from the coin toss, whether it lands heads or tails, and who wins it, all the way up to and including your Super Bowl MVP winner and your final score for Super Bowl 53 on February 3rd.
Are you going to give all these to us beforehand, or are you just going to shoot them at us on the fly?
I will probably have a list for you guys beforehand, so you have time to think about it.
That makes it fun.
I will give you a hint. If you are on the Action Network app, they have already released the line and certain betting tips for one of the props that will be discussed.
I'll go ahead and tell them it, because I know which one you're referring to, and this is one that Erik and I came up with. We're going to go over-under on the length of the national anthem.
Mm-hmm. They released who's singing it.
Who's singing it?
Last night.
Oh, so that's going to definitely be over because and Fox is going to promote the hell out of it because of the Masked Singer.
It's on. Yes.
If you read the article, there's arguments either way with her singing style, trends on the over/under in recent years. They really break that down. Again, Action Network. If you want to make money off of this, that's the place to go. # Green Dot City.
All I'm going to say is, I will tease you guys with this here. Over/under. Line straight up and against the spread. MVP. Heads and tails for the opening kick. Various things that we'll see during the game. For example, this is one that Erik and I put together. You will be naming the top passer, receiver, and rusher for the Super Bowl, regardless of team.
Okay.
And since we have the matchup, with the booth even will not be safe with some of our props.
I'm even going to throw in a special one, and I'm announcing this one to everybody now because Erik didn't even know it. Will we get a Super Bowl doink?
Oh,
I want to throw a prop out there. I want to throw one out there just for the kickoff. Will you guys extend the show long enough for me to fall asleep during it? God damn.
Over under on the length of the show.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. Over under for the length of the Super Bowl review show.
I've had to get up and walk around twice. I've been up since 5 a.m.
We have a bunch of crazy stuff. Gentlemen, enjoy your week off next week. You've earned it. We look forward to talking to everybody once again in a week and a half. We are just 12 days away from the biggest Sunday in professional football. It is Super Bowl Sunday coming up soon. Wait, we're more than 12 days away. My math is off.
Yeah, we're 15 days away.
Thank you. I went the other way. You're right. My math was off. Thank you, Brandon. 4, Jason Teasley, Erik Watkins, and Brandon Biskobing. I'm Harry Broadhurst. This has been The Kickoff here on the W2M Network, available online at W2Mnet.com. In addition, you can listen to us on all of your favorite podcast devices: iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Podbean, CastBox. Hey, Brandon, guess what?
Spotify is here.
And Jason's a dick. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you in a week and a half with your Super Bowl preview episode of The Kickoff on the W2M Network.